From our Toronto studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I am Ahmed Ramadan. Rights groups urge the U.S. to free 16-year-old Palestinian-American jailed in Israel. This and more on today's show. Stay tuned. Stanford University student newspaper is suing Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. The Stanford Daily says student journalists are being targeted for their reporting. Editors say fear has spread on campuses, with some reporters now avoiding sensitive stories. The lawsuit is backed by the civil liberties group FIRE. It argues that rare immigration laws are being used to silence critics of Israel's genocide on Gaza. Legal experts call the statutes extraordinary and rarely used, and courts have already questioned their legality. The arrests of Columbia University student Mahmoud Khalil and Tufts University student Rumaisa Ozturk earlier this year sparked the newspaper's lawsuit. Both students face detention and deportation after protests or opinion pieces. Judges have ordered releases in similar cases. The Stanford Daily says the First Amendment protects all voices in the U.S. A hearing is set for October 1st, with press groups saying the case is a major test for free speech. Israel has ordered 1.2 million people in Gaza City to leave their homes. The military told them to move south ahead of a planned assault on the city. The order came through social media with maps showing 19 blue-marked zones where civilians should go. But aid groups and experts say many of these areas are marked by Israel itself as dangerous. Humanitarian agencies warn that forcing such a large population into less than 1/5 of Gaza's territory could cause a severe crisis. They say this will leave civilians trapped in unsafe areas without proper shelter or aid. Israeli newspaper Haaretz reports that even Israel's military experts acknowledged risks in the designated zones. Israel plans to fully take control of Gaza City while civilians face growing displacement and worsening humanitarian conditions. The forced relocation of civilian population as part of an organized offensive is against that population is called forcible transfer in international law. It is a crime against humanity, punishable by the International Criminal Court. In related news, the United States stands alone at the UN Security Council by refusing to sign a statement declaring Gaza's deepening famine a man-made crisis. 14 members condemned Israel's use of starvation as a weapon of war, calling it a clear violation of international law. They urged an immediate and permanent ceasefire, the release of prisoners, and unrestricted humanitarian aid. The statement demands that Israel lift its blockade and halt expanded military operations in Gaza City. UN officials warn that famine has already been confirmed in Gaza's most populated areas and is expected to spread. More than 500,000 Palestinians face starvation, a figure projected to rise sharply next month. Aid groups describe children arriving at clinics too weak to cry or speak. Gaza's health ministry reports 10 new starvation deaths, including 2 children, bringing the total to 313, among them 119 children. The U.S. has declined to join the global call. Do you want me to do the last 2 paragraphs? More than 100 human rights and advocacy groups are urging Secretary of State Marco Rubio to secure the release of a 16-year-old Palestinian-American boy imprisoned without trial in Israel. Florida-born Mohammed Zahir Ibrahim has been held since February after Israel detained him during a family visit to the West Bank. He is jailed at Ofer Prison, where his lawyers say he has lost more than 30 pounds, contracted scabies, and been denied food, medical care, and contact with his parents. Organizations calling for his release include American Muslims for Palestine, Jewish Voice for Peace Action, the Council on American Islamic Relations, and Code Pink, who signed a letter released Tuesday. The family of Aysenur AG, a Turkish-American murdered by Israeli forces last year, also backed the appeal. The group says Ibrahim's detention violates the 4th Geneva Convention and urged Washington to protect all American children. The Israeli military and the State Department have not yet commented. Israel is facing backlash after its Arabic language account on X urged Europe to wake up and remove Muslims. The Post warned of a rise in mosques across Europe, calling it colonization, and accused some mosques of spreading hatred and violence. Observers slammed the statement as racist and Islamophobic. Journalists and activists compared it to far-right rhetoric, noting that even Germany's AfD party has not used such language. Social media users also pointed out Israel's figures on mosques numbers were misleading, especially in countries with large Muslim populations like Russia. Others noted that nearly 2 million Muslim citizens face widespread discrimination in Israel, a settler colonial state. A number of users also said Palestinians live under an apartheid regime in the Israeli-occupied territories. Some pointed to the contrast between how Palestinians treat Christian communities and how Israel treats Christian institutions. Others mocked the map used, saying its fear-mongering figures ignored basic demographics. Israeli soldiers killed at least 71 Palestinians in attacks across Gaza in the past 24 hours. The health ministry says 22 of them were waiting for aid. Another 339 people were wounded. Israeli strikes hit refugee camp and residential areas. A woman and her child died in Bureish camp. 2 children were among those killed in Shati camp when tents for displaced people were bombed. Israeli forces also killed civilians waiting near the Netzarim corridor in Rafah. 4 more Palestinians, including 2 children, died of starvation in the same period due to Israel's blockade of food and humanitarian aid since March 2nd. Famine-related deaths since October 2023 have risen to 317, including 121 children. The UN says Israel is using starvation as a weapon of war. Aid deliveries remain far below urgent needs. Israel has only allowed 467 trucks to enter Gaza in 5 days, while thousands wait at the border. The Palestinian Civil Defense says that Israel has demolished more than 1,500 homes in Zaytun in recent operations, forcing most residents to flee. UN rights staff warned that Israel's actions now meet the legal definition of genocide. Israel has killed over 64,000 Palestinians since the start of its genocide in Gaza in October 2023, most of them women, children, and the elderly. White House ties tariff relief to India's Russian oil imports as Trump's 50% tariffs take effect. Details coming up next. Welcome back. President Donald Trump ordered flags flown at half-staff nationwide after a shooting at a Catholic church in Minneapolis left 2 children dead and 17 others injured yesterday. Police said the victims, ages 8 and 10, were killed while sitting in the pews. 14 of the injured were children, 2 critically. The suspect, identified as 23-year-old Robin Westman, killed himself inside the church. Authorities say he acted alone. The FBI is treating the attack as domestic terrorism and a hate crime targeting Catholics. Social media videos linked to Westman show weapons and a note describing violent thoughts. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz called the shooting horrific, noting that it struck during the first week of school. Federal and state agencies are investigating. A senior White House official has tied U.S. tariff relief for India to its oil trade with Russia. Peter Navarro, counselor for trade and manufacturing, said Wednesday that New Delhi could see a 25% reduction in tariffs tomorrow if it halts Russian oil purchases. In an interview with Bloomberg, Navarro accused Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi of funding Moscow's war through discounted crude sales. He said the revenue helps Russia buy drones and bombs to attack Ukraine. He added that stopping India and China from importing Russian oil would quickly dry up Moscow's war chest. The warning comes as President Donald Trump's 50% tariff on Indian imports takes effect. Washington first imposed a 25% levy earlier this month, then doubled it in response to India's Russian crude deals. U.S.-India trade reached $129 billion in 2024, with a U.S. deficit of $45.8 billion. At least 4 senior officials at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, have resigned, citing political interference and the weaponizing of public health. The resignations followed the ouster of CDC Director Susan Moneres and new restrictions on COVID-19 vaccines. The steps were announced by Health and Human Services Secretary Robert Kennedy, Jr. Those stepping down include Dimitri Deskaliakis, Daniel Jernigan, Deborah Huri, and Jen Layden. In farewell messages, they warned that scientific work at the agency was being censored and vaccine risks overstated. Deskaliakis, who led the U.S. response to the 2022 Mpox outbreak, said he could no longer serve under such conditions. Huri warned that misinformation and political pressure were costing lives. The departure comes just weeks after a shooting at CDC headquarters in Atlanta and amid renewed criticism of Kennedy's stance on vaccines and public health. At least 14 people have died in heavy rains and floods across Sudan. Local media said 6 people were killed in River Nile State when homes collapsed and witnesses reported entire towns and villages were swept away in the region. A mother and 3 of her children also died in Sennar State. Power lines went down and dozens of buildings crumbled. The Sudanese Doctors Committee said 154 homes were damaged and more than 1,000 people displaced. Authorities have been urged to deliver urgent food, water, and medical aid to survivors. Sudan faces seasonal floods every year from June to October. This year's disaster comes on top of a brutal civil war between the army and the Rapid Support Forces. The conflict, which has been raging since April 2023, has killed tens of thousands and displaced millions, making rescue and relief efforts even harder. The UK has maintained its position as the leading Western center for Islamic finance, Fitch Ratings says. London remains a key listing venue for global sukuk, with English law often used to govern international deals. The London Metal Exchange also provides vital cash financing channels for Islamic banks. UK-based Islamic funds reached $12.5 billion in assets by mid-2025, while Islamic banking assets grew 38% year-on-year to $11.4 billion. A new Islamic bank was added in 2024, and the UK now has more than 50 Islamic fintech firms. The London Stock Exchange lists more than 40% of global hard currency sukuk, though it faces competition from Dublin, Frankfurt, and Nasdaq Dubai. Nearly all sukuk on the LSE come from Gulf states, whose investors also are key shareholders in UK banks. However, experts say Islamic banks still make up only 0.1% of UK banking assets, facing challenges of awareness, product range, and accessibility. Intel is facing scrutiny after reports linked to the U.S. chipmaker to Chinese surveillance companies accused of human rights abuses. According to Forbes, Intel has worked with Uniview, Hikvision, and CloudWalk, which have all been sanctioned for enabling surveillance of Uyghurs and other minorities. Promotional material on Intel's site highlights Hikvision's Deep Eye smart cameras and CloudWalk's facial recognition systems, both powered by Intel processors. Uniview, described as a titanium partner, has supplied software for smart police and smart prison projects and was found to have developed ethnicity detection tools. Intel said its products are general purpose and often distributed through third parties. Spokesperson Nancy Sanchez stressed the company follows international standards and halts business if misuse is confirmed. President Donald Trump has called for Intel's chairman to resign over alleged conflicts and is weighing a plan for the U.S. to buy a 10% stake in the company. A team of scientists in California has created a breakthrough stress test. It can measure cortisol, the body's main stress hormone, using just a drop of blood or urine and a smartphone camera. The new tool was developed by Andy Ye, a biomolecular engineer at the University of California, Santa Cruz. It uses an artificial protein sensor that lights up when it binds to cortisol. The brighter the light, the higher the hormone level. A smartphone camera captures this signal and turns it into a precise reading. Until now, cortisol tests required expensive lab equipment and clinical visits. Some say it could help doctors, patients, and researchers better monitor stress, metabolism, and related diseases. The sensor also may be adapted for drug testing and other medical uses in the future. The research was backed by National Institutes of Health's National Institute of Biomedical Imaging and Bioengineering, the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, and the University of California, Santa Cruz Startup Fund. That's all from our Toronto studios. Thank you for watching Muslim News. We are a community channel dedicated to bringing you stories you can trust. Please like, share, and subscribe to our content. You can also comment to let us know what you think of our coverage. You can donate now by visiting muslimnetwork.tv/donate. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV. Salam.